Boy, is it ever good to be back. Welcome back to the Wolverine.com's postgame show, the first edition of the 2023 season. Michigan wins 30-3 over visiting East Carolina. Anthony Broom here, along with my co-host for the first time in several months, Mr. Ryan Van Bergen. Ryan, welcome into the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here, excited to be back, and excited for this season of football.
Absolutely. Before we get to Ryan, we'll run through a scoring summary here really fast for those of you who may have not seen the game or had trouble getting to Peacock or figured it's a non-conference blowout, and we'll get to it later. Michigan got the scoring started at 5:43 of the first quarter on a Roman Wilson 14-yard touchdown reception from J.J. McCarthy. Michigan would go up 7-0 after James Turner's extra point. Michigan would take a 14-0 lead in the second quarter thanks to a Blake Corum 2-yard run. That lead would be extended to 20-0. Missed extra point after this score thanks to the second touchdown connection of the day between Roman Wilson and J.J. McCarthy, this time from 10 yards out, and then a field goal right before the half from 50 yards, a career long for James Turner, put Michigan up 23-0 at the half. Michigan comes out of the locker room with a 12-play, 75-yard drive, taking a little less than 6 minutes off the clock on the third touchdown connection of the day between J.J. McCarthy and Roman Wilson, this time from 15 yards out, to go up 30-0. And then, of course, as some of you saw at the end of the game, East Carolina, a team that had not been shut out, and I believe the stat was 312 straight games, called a timeout, kicked a sad field goal at the end to prevent the shutout. Michigan wins 30-3. And of course, and we'll get into all the takeaways from it. J.J. McCarthy, 26 of 30, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Blake Corum, his first game back after his knee surgery last winter, 10 attempts for 73 yards and a touchdown. And Roman Wilson, of course, with the 3 touchdown catches, 6 receptions, 78 yards on the day. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, want to say that we are sponsored today by our presenting sponsor, our friends over at My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, our pal Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. And best of all, his services are 100% free to use. So what do you have to lose? Andy has been a great partner with the Wolverine. We appreciate their support here during the postgame show, and he will be our presenting sponsor during our postgame shows this season. So head on over to myperfectfranchise.net. You can call Andy at 404-973-9901. That again, shout out to Andy and myperfectfranchise.net. Ryan Van Bergen, I know Michigan comes into this game as a 36-point favorite, so a little bit disappointing that they weren't able to cover that number. A few miscues in the second half prevented that from happening, but your snap reactions to the performance that we saw in Ann Arbor today.
I think they look good. I think we kind of had the highest expectations we've had in a while preseason-wise, coming in at AP number 2, and we're returning a lot, so I think it's a deserved ranking as we head into the season. So the expectations are high. I wouldn't say that today was in any way disappointing, but I think that there were some opportunities to really explode this game open. But I don't feel like at any point was Eastern Carolina going to threaten to challenge this team. We're deeper than deep at a lot of positions, and we had some guys that didn't even play today that are key contributors. So overall, I thought that this was a pretty clean performance, took care of the football, played sound defense, and had a lot of guys out there that may not otherwise be getting time.
Absolutely. No starters were listed as out in the pregame injury report, which is coming out now 2 hours before each game. But Rod Moore was suited up, did not play. Tyler Morris suited up, did not play. Will Johnson suited up, did not play. Everyone else, the guys that were out, Amorian Walker, Jimmy Rolder, Tavier Dunlap, German Green, Peyton O'Leary, Logan Forbes. No starting players or guys that will really maybe contribute a whole lot in the 2 deep that missed today's game. So relatively clean bill of health. I want to start out on offense. Actually, before we do that, let's take the super chat here from our friend Shane Johnson, who says, preseason, lots to work on. But JJ, as I said, will blow through all Michigan records en route to Houston. By the way, I asked an ECU fan as I was walking out why the field goal, and he said, because we haven't been shut out since 6. What did you make of that field goal at the end, Ryan?
It's a pride field goal. There's a lot of things not going well. You saw some frustration penalties from the ECU guys doing some extracurricular activities, and you get all amped up. You go through camp, and you're looking forward to having some highlight, something that keeps you coming back. You play golf, you have that one swing that makes you think you can come back and play golf again. So these guys needed that one thing to hang their hat on, and I think that was it. And I don't fault them for it. I think that you've got to have something to build on if you're Eastern Carolina, because I don't think they're a bad team, to be honest with you. From what I saw, I got to go to the game, I was there for the first half, then came back and caught up on the second half on Peacock, which we can go into that some other time. But yeah, from what I saw, when I saw them in person, these guys were playing hard. They were outmatched, but they were playing hard, and they were giving us everything they had up front, trying to delay, slow down, make our run game slower with different slants and different blitz packages. So I think before you talk about how good or Michigan looked and start evaluating, position by position, how they played, you got to kind of tip your hat. I think Eastern Carolina came in and played a pretty good football game, and I'm glad they got their 3 points as they exited the stadium.
Yeah, ECU has played some really respectable ball under head coach Mike Houston. They won 8 games last year. Talked to a couple East Carolina beat guys this week, and then at the game here on Saturday, and that team is give them their flowers first and foremost. They played extremely hard. Sometimes they played past the whistle, and they paid the price for that. But that's a group that Michigan had. The story of Michigan's season is they bring back so much from last year, whereas East Carolina is replacing about as much as what Michigan has. So shout out to them. I mean, again, Vegas didn't expect this game to be that close, and there were a couple of things that maybe prevented it from being that way. But East Carolina came out and played hard, just way overmatched, and that's what we expect to see when Michigan plays a team like this. But I want to start on the offensive side of the ball. JJ McCarthy, and again, I'm just going to get it out of the way up front. You can leave all of the caveats of non-conference opponent, level of competition, whatever. That's fine. We're going to get a billion comments about it. But that being said, 26 of 30, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. All of the reports about this guy being locked in and fully in command of this offense were true. And they made the pass game an emphasis today. I think the first half they ran 30 plays, 18 of them were through the air. JJ was 16 for 18 in that first half. And what we saw, and again, they're not running the air right, but what we saw was him attacking the middle of the field, the intermediate parts of the field. And, we talked about the Roman Wilson performance, but, Cornelius Johnson, Colston Loveland, those guys both had good days as well. But this is as comfortable and as poised as I think we've seen JJ McCarthy since taking over last year.
I would agree. He seems like he's got all 8 cylinders of the engine figured out. And I honestly think if we're looking at his complete game, the one thing you didn't see, and I'm sure they told him to avoid it, was his legs and him running the ball. I think there were opportunities that he had there that he could have taken off and got what he could, as opposed to continuing to look downfield. But that's getting nitpicky. I mean, he had 15 straight completions, I believe, leading into the halftime. So he's making great decisions with the ball. The ball comes out nice. It looks awesome. The offensive line's giving him tons of time. You got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line, especially in a home opener, because you might have seen what they did in week 12 or week 13 last year, as far as watching film on East Carolina, but you don't know what they're coming into the big house with. It's a big game for them. They're going to have all sorts of new packages and things you haven't seen. And I thought they kept him really clean. He got opportunities to make plays down the field and threw some really good balls. His last touchdown to Roman Wilson, that he made a very veteran move by freezing the corner with a look to the flat and then layered in a nice post flag to the back of the end zone. And I just feel like he's got just a few extra nuances and a few more details that he understands of this offense, and it just makes him that much more dangerous.
We have a $9.99 super chat from Devon Robinson, who says, I know you guys are addressing the offense first, but 0 sacks on defense is by far the biggest concern from this game. And I would agree with that. And I would also say, I thought, and maybe this is where we talk about both lines here, Ryan. I think offensive and defensive lines probably left a lot to be desired outside of Kenneth Grant. Want to give him his flowers. I think he had 2 pressures on the day, at least 2 that I saw. I believe both of them were on third down. One of them led to Mike Sainristil's interception. So nice day out of him. But the lines on both sides of the ball, I think we need to see more.
I would agree. Defensive line was probably one of the spots that if you were going to comb over and see where do you need the most improvement. I thought at the defensive line, we don't have guys out. Those were our starting guys, and they, for whatever reason, weren't getting the quarterback down. I do think I'd have to look at statistics as to when or how many pressures each guy got, because I do think that we were getting there and getting him to throw the ball out of rhythm, off time, and so they were getting him out of rhythm, but it wasn't getting sacks, and that's something that you want to see statistically is these guys producing sacks. So I expect big things. Kenneth Grant I thought played well. Mason Graham, I thought he'd show up a little bit more, especially in the pass rush situations. But they were running a lot of quick game. They were getting the ball out of this guy's hands, and I feel like as long as you're getting pressures and getting within range of a guy when they're running their offense the way that they were, you're doing what you can defensively. There was more to be desired, but I don't have alarms going off, super concerns about the defensive line, but would love to see some more production.
Yeah, and part of it too is you have to take the good with the bad. I mean, this time last year, you and I hop on the post-game show after the opener, after the defensive line goes out and has 9 sacks in a game, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, here they come. They might be better." It's crazy to think they might be even better without Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. So, I mean, water's got to find its level. We'll find out what this group is made of. But the offense that ECU has historically run is they're winging it, and they're getting the ball out quick, and they're making sure that pass rush doesn't get there. And again, for his I don't want to say lackluster, but for his uninspiring, maybe that's a worse term. I don't know. But for what we saw from the defensive line today, I also think the flip side of that is I think the back seven played really well. Linebackers were terrific. Ernest Hausman led the team in tackles. He's a guy that is just an athlete at linebacker they didn't quite have last year. He's going to be right in there with Junior Colson and Mike Barrett all year. That's a really good rotation that they have at the top. I thought Keon Saab played relatively well. Another guy who thrown into the fire with Rod Moore out. And that's something else too. I mean, Rod Moore is a guy that nobody watches as much film as he does. Few guys are as instinctual and find themselves in the right place at the right time as he does. So I don't want to say that they felt that today. I thought that the secondary played really well. Tackling needs a little bit of work. Other defensive notes that I had, we'll get back to the offense. Again, Kenneth Grant, I would probably get my game ball on defense along with Mike Sainer still. Other than that, I mean, again, it was pretty. You go through and you look at the game stats. ECU only had 235 yards of total offense. A lot of that came late. 132 yards passing, 103 yards on the ground, which, again, you'd like to see that be a little bit better, I guess. But again, a lot of their offensive production came in that last quarter and a half or so. They were 5 for 13 on third down. 4.3 yards per play. I'm trying to think of anything else here. Yeah, I mean, 5 tackles for loss. The defense played well. If I had to throw a grade on them, I'd say it was a B- or a B. But a lot of that expectation is set on knowing that they can do so much more.
I think so. I think that we just lack the highlight plays that you're probably expecting, and I think that that's partially the game plan and a credit to what Eastern Carolina came in and ran against us. But I would agree. I had Ernest Hausman highlighted as someone I wanted to talk about because this guy kind of came, at least for me, from nowhere and seemed to really make an impact in a guy that I think has earned himself some more time on the field. And that linebacker rotation that you were talking about is pretty elite. I think they get looked over. No one's talking about the linebackers from Michigan on a national scale or in the Big Ten Conference, I don't think. But Michael Barrett, Junior Colson, and if Ernest Hausman can play the way that he played today, I think that our linebackers are quite elite and underrated. And they can make up for a lot when they're playing well. And then what you said, Rod Moore, I also see him more of as a captain of the secondary. He's always been a guy, even when he was out there as a true freshman, that is in charge of alignment and making sure everybody understands what their coverage rules are and what's going to happen pre-snap. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to the guys, and something I was made me think that there's a lot of good things in the future and more of our depth. But the guys were getting really lined up really well and talking really well. There was different motions and different things that you could tell that maybe they had not seen in practice, and guys that are second string or maybe even third string in the secondary are getting lined up. And there's been times in the past where we've came on this podcast after game one, a win, and we look for things that maybe we can improve on. And I feel like that's something we've complained about in the past or picked on as the past is we're not getting lined up. We don't look like we know where we're going. Everybody looked on the same page, offensively, defensively, special teams, besides that one field goal. So definitely some positives as far as what we came out of, and definitely not something that I was expecting to be so crisp week one.
Well, and something else that we haven't even addressed this yet. I mean, obviously Jim Harbaugh not on the sideline for the first of his 3-game suspension. Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, running the show today. The fact that I won't say Minter. I mean, yeah, you can say this. Minter was just spread more thin from a game operation standpoint than he normally would be, and I thought the communication was good for the most part. I think credit to their position coaches as well. Steve Clinkscale, Mike Elston. Jay Harbaugh with the safeties, Chris Partridge with the linebackers. I mean, when you're a man down on the coaching staff, 2 men down, everyone has to take on a little bit more. And I thought the coaching staff did a really nice job this week for the most part. I want to flip back over to offense and talk about, we hit on the offensive line a little bit. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. The starting offensive line today, Carson Barnhart, Trevor Keegan, Drake Nugent, Zach Sinter, and Miles Hinton, a bit of a surprise, coming on late in fall camp to take one of those jobs, at least for this week. We'll see what happens if they continue to do the Michigan method, as Jim Harbaugh has set up, in terms of rotating guys and having guys start different games. But offensive line, I think from a pass blocking perspective, about as good as it gets. I don't think J.J. McCarthy had faced a ton of pressure in this game. He had time to throw. He had pockets to step up into. Run game is where people will probably come out of this game the most concerned. I saw some tweets about Blake Corum, people saying Blake Corum looks a little bit rusty or doesn't quite look as fast. And I'll say this, that he hasn't quite looked as fast since the 2021 season when he was, initially hurt. I think he had an ankle injury, but there's some rust to knock off there. He looked a little bit tentative at times, but, we saw in that 37-yard run that the old Blake is still in there. I think for him, it's about getting those game reps, getting the rust knocked off. And for Michigan too, keeping him fresh. In a game like this, you're going to win by a ton. Maybe keeping his touches to, 10, 11, 12 attempts. And that's what they did, 10 carries for 73 yards. But the offensive line and the run game in particular, seemed like there was some meat left on the bone there. Is that what you saw?
I think so. And I think that both Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum have similar mindsets, especially in a game like this, of we've got to get what we can get. And it's not a game where you have to necessarily sell out body wise to get the first down or to get points on the board. At least it didn't turn into that. And I think if they had to dial it into that level, then they both would have. But, keeping both of these guys healthy is so imperative to the success of this team as we move forward. So I see what people are saying when they say, yeah, maybe Corum doesn't have the burst that we used to see or something like that. But I also think that gear is there for him. I just think that it's just like if you're, I think, trying to take care of a quarterback. J.J. McCarthy could have ran a lot more today. But again, I don't think we honestly trust him to get down or be smart when he runs the football. He's just a baller, and he's going to be a baller, and there's nothing you can do about it. So just don't give him the opportunity to run the ball. But I think you saw some conservative decisions being made. We used to call them career decisions being made by Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy. And as a fan and someone who wants your team to be good for the long haul, the marathon that is this football season, I think you have to be okay with that being the case.
Yeah, and like we said, he hasn't played in a game. I mean, he tried to play in the Ohio State game last year, but it clearly just wasn't the same. He hasn't really played at full health since the Illinois game. So there's natural. I mean, listen, for his, an elite an athlete as he is, for as mentally sound an athlete as he is, there's still some cobwebs to shake off, both mentally and physically. Sometimes you have to take that first hit and then, take that ice bath after the game in order to feel like, you're back to where you were before. So we'll see. I don't have any questions about the run game now. The one thing I'll give ECU a lot of credit, more than the lion's share of credit, is that they were loading the box. They were not going to let Michigan beat them by running the football, which is something that they tried to impose their will doing most of the time last year. And I think the most encouraging thing to come out of that is that, you have a guy like J.J. McCarthy who's capable of giving or taking what a defense gives you. And again, we talked about him a bit already, but he's on the money on a lot of these throws. He talked about that one to Roman Wilson in the south end zone, the last touchdown pass he had of the game. I look at the way he played, and it's crazy to think that Michigan still has a passing touchdown season record of 25. I mean, you watch JJ play the way he did today, and again, all bets are off when they get down to the goal line, which is again it was an adventure again today, as it was in the TCU game and as it was sometimes last year from 1 yard out or 2 yards out. But with them pushing the ball the way that they did, they are, last year they said they wanted to zig when defenses would zag, but I feel like they have the goods to do that this year, and the personnel, the talent to kind of feast and take away, just take chunks of yardage, out of a defense over the middle of the field.
I think so. And I think the biggest question mark offensively for us is what receivers are going to emerge and be some of the guys that can help us in the passing game. Cause that's been the knock on the most recent Michigan football being played, is that we don't have a dynamic passing game. And part of it could be argued that, well, we have such an elite run game. What do we need that for? But it's nice to know that you have that as a tool in the belt. It also is nice to remind the defense that you're playing that you can't put 7, 8 in the box every play, because we will make you pay. And that's something that I thought we put on film today. And also we used the pass, I think, to try to open up the run later in the second half and third quarter. And I think JJ and has great connection with Roman Wilson. I think he has a great connection with Cornelius Johnson. I think him and Colston Loveland connect really well. I think Donovan Edwards getting more involved in the pass game will be a thing. And I think he's got to get some receptions on top of his carries, maybe Corum as well, but more, I think priority would go to Edwards as far as throwing the ball to him and targets. But we need another receiver to show up and be a possession guy and help out. But I feel like these guys having some veteran experience with JJ McCarthy and running these routes after practice and having so many repetitions with them, when they see a certain coverage or they see a DB do something, and they know what McCarthy's thinking. So now I know where I need to go to get the ball. And I think you're going to see some more of this chemistry and some more layers to the passing game as they get through the season.
I want to give the third phase of the game the respect it deserves. Moving over to a couple special teams takeaways. And also, we will take questions here on the show. So if you guys are watching live on YouTube, feel free to get those in there. We'll start getting those queued up and rolling along for the back half of the show here. But special teams. Normally, we wouldn't fixate too long on this, but this is the first time in a while Michigan hasn't had Jake Moody, hasn't had a Brad Robbins. The punt return stuff today was a bit of an adventure. James, why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? James Turner, the Louisville transfer, taking over for Jake Moody. Missed on a couple kicks. Hit the 50-yarder just before halftime. Tommy Dolman has a huge leg. We saw that at times on display. Still some improvements that can be made there. And like I said, the return game right now is a bit of an adventure. So Ryan, in general, how do you feel about, obviously there's a big shift on special teams based on, what was there last year, but how did you feel about what you saw in that phase?
Room for improvement is what I saw. I mean, we were spoiled. Jake Moody was such a tremendous college football kicker. I mean, it's not something that you spend a lot of time talking about. Who are the best kickers that you've seen in college football? But Jake Moody is going to be one of those guys remembered as one of the best kickers. And we've been spoiled with him. And it's been so automatic for so long with him. So, I thought Turner, I almost called him Moody again, but Turner had that 50-yarder that kind of gave him some confidence. But then I also saw an extra point that was knuckly. And then that other field goal he missed that was knuckly. So some miss hits. It's all a head game, I think, when you're a kicker. He obviously has the ability. He made the 50-yarder, and he's been doing this. He was at Louisville, transferred in. So I have to believe he'll get his feet underneath him and make kicks. And then the return game is something that is a question mark, and I don't understand why it's a question mark. There's got to be somebody in practice that's emerged as a guy that will do something with the football and make smart decisions. I think they're just waiting for that guy to emerge. I would thought everything I'd heard I was going to see Orji back there doing kick return, punt return. I didn't see him back there, but I was looking forward to seeing him, see if he get a crack at it. But we have the athletes, and I got to believe someone's going to emerge and be special at that position. It's just someone has to take advantage of an opportunity and earn that spot.
Yeah, those jobs are there to be had. I didn't, at least in the return game, I didn't see anything on Saturday that suggested that anything is sorted out and for sure there. And I was kind of surprised that we didn't see Alex Orji. He was dressed. I'd have to check at the participation chart, but I don't know that he even saw the field. Was kind of locked in on finishing up some post-game stuff or getting post-game stuff ready in that second half. But yeah, surprised to see that. I want to hear, this might be the most interesting angle of coming out of this game, off the field anyways. And it has more to do with the viewing experience. From everything social media said, Ryan, and you got a little taste of this in the second half, the Peacock broadcast was an absolute disaster.
Yes. Yes. Elaborate. Well, yeah, I came home and I'm going to try and start it from the start of the third quarter. And the commercials on Peacock are not actual commercials, at least on whichever one you have, because there's two versions of Peacock. You can have the cheaper one that's supposed to have have commercials, or the unlimited one that has no commercials. But when you watch a live event, the one with no commercials still just has a blank screen and says your program will continue soon. So as I'm trying to fast forward and rewind, all I see is this blank screen back and forth. And then every now and again, I go from 4K resolution to pixelated to 4K resolution to pixelated. So it was nice. I kind of went in time warp from the box TVs of the 90s to the Nest TVs of 2023 and got to see both versions of that. So yeah, I don't know when Peacock is planning to stream any other games, but please, Michigan, let's stick to somewhere that's done this before.
Yeah, so as far as the Peacock thing goes, I think that this is their only Peacock exclusive that's on the schedule for this year. There's going to be the NBC games that are on, if you're in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, Channel 4 or whatever your NBC affiliate is. Those games will be on there, and you can also watch them on Peacock. The game replays of those will be available on Peacock, I believe. But this is our only streaming only venture of the year, and it's cool to see Mike Tirico in town, and I'm sure the broadcast and the operations of that element were fine. But yeah, I've heard nothing but with people that have used it to watch MLB games, with people who have used it to watch some of these pay-per-view wrestling events. It's typically laggy. It typically switches between 480p and 4K, whatever it decides it wants to do. So yeah, thankfully, if you are someone who has not cut the cord, this will be the last time you have to deal with that today. So yeah, we have plenty of time for questions here. So feel free to line those up, guys that are watching live. We've got a lot of time here. We will stay here as long as you ask the questions. But something I want to hit on, Ryan, given that it's the first time we've spoke on the air in several months, the Jim Harbaugh suspension. Obviously, today I didn't think it had, operationally, everything was pretty smooth down there. They only had, they had 5 penalties, but it seemed like a lot of that came late. It didn't seem like I thought the play calling was good for the most part. I thought the time management was good for the most part. Again, things got a little wonky on the goal line, but that's a Michigan tradition for some reason now that they need to find a way to break themselves of. But, this 3-game suspension, obviously next week it'll be Jay Harbaugh in the first half, Mike Hart in the second half. Sharon Moore will take over. Sharon Moore not with the team today, serving his 1-game suspension. Sharon Moore will coach that UNLV game, and Jim Harbaugh returns against Rutgers. But just in general, how do you feel about that situation? And from my purview, it didn't seem like it really affected them on the field on Saturday, but just what you've seen, and as a former player, how operationally you think that would be to deal with as a player.
I don't think it'd be too much of a distraction. I feel like it being in the media and the constant questions surrounding Coach Harbaugh's suspension, or is he suspended for? Is it self-imposed? Was there a cheeseburger where there's no cheese? Who knows? But I think that overall, the team should be able to operate with the guys that are on staff. And if Harbaugh needs to miss games, I was expecting no drop off in terms of game management or substitutions and stuff like that. These are some guys, it's an opportunity for these coaches for sure, that these guys can show that and showcase their abilities and how they can run not only their position group, but maybe even, beyond their position group. And I think it's good for the coaches. I think the players are probably having fun with it. I think it'd be something that in Schembechler Hall would be fun to mess around and talk to your head coach, who's your position coach, or maybe your defensive coordinator. And I think there's probably some fun interactions and exchanges that are happening. But overall, I think it's kind of crazy. I feel like that Michigan the scrutiny surrounding what seems to be some minor infractions. And I feel like there's things that are happening or have happened at other universities that are successful, both in the Big Ten and SEC, that gets constantly ignored. No one's going over that with a microscope. And, I think Harbaugh serving a 3-game suspension hopefully eases and appeases all the parties that have been upset about who we feed and what Zoom calls we make.
I'm going to take a comment here from Mr. Dave, who said, people took it for granted that Blake Corum would come back 100% from surgery. We'll see. Again, I guess to kind of elaborate on that, I didn't see it. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I didn't see anything from him to suggest that there's some kind of, that there is, that we should be concerned about him moving forward. I think what I saw was a guy who's just knocking some rust off. And, anytime you have a knee surgery, I mean, there are always going to be wear and tear concerns. And, again, maybe you do lose a step, because he has had some injuries in the past, but, I still think this guy, push comes to shove, is this team's lead back. Don't you?
I agree. And I also think that there might be some misconceptions of what Blake Corum is as a running back. Blake Corum is not a straight line speed, run away from the defense type of guy. In my opinion, his strength is his lateral quickness, his shiftiness, his evasiveness, especially in small spaces near the line of scrimmage and just beyond the second level. And he had some runs like that today where he had a jump cut that was just nasty, and a guy that was within 3 yards of him never got any closer because of the cut that he made. And there just was a follow-up guy right there on him. And I think there's a whole lot of elements that go into why that played out the way that it did. I don't think that the primary element is that Blake Corum's not healthy. I think they had a lot of guys in the box. Their defense, because of being undersized, they did a lot of slanting and moving. And when you slant line one way, your linebackers go the other way to cover for him. So there just weren't a lot of lanes once he made that initial cutback. But I thought both him and Donovan Edwards got what they could and made some good career decisions of when they got down and decided to not try and get this extra yard or 2 yards or 3 yards, because the touchdown's not on the table. So I think Blake Corum is what he has been, and I think he will, get a little bit more comfortable. But I think Blake Corum was 95% today, and he'll have more opportunities and he'll explode out. But when they have 7 or 8 in the box, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and the offensive line today, and we have a question about them coming up. Again, they just didn't play to the level of, back-to-back Joe Moore award-winning guys. And you're rotating some new guys in there. And this is from Blank Name. He says the transfers looked like the worst offensive linemen. There's something we need to remember about this. And obviously, Ladarius Henderson didn't start at tackle, but you had Drake Nugent at center, Miles Hinton at right tackle. All 3 of those guys, Henderson wasn't with the team yet in the spring. Nugent was injured in the spring. I think Miles Hinton was banged up or coming back from something in the spring. A lot of these, they need the game reps. And that's where, these first 3 games, for as much criticism as there is about the level of competition, those guys need reps and you need chemistry, because offensive line is so tied into knowing what that guy next to you is going to do, knowing what he likes, knowing the type of help he prefers, knowing where to be on every single play. And that's something that is going to have to improve. I mean, that was probably, if I had to power rank the position groups coming out of today's game, those guys in the defensive line are probably towards the bottom of that list. But I do think it's important to remember that, when it comes to Nugent, when it comes to Hinton, when it comes to Henderson, when he works in there, these guys have not been with Michigan yet. And one of the voices that, they've leaned on in this transition, Sharon Moore, wasn't out there on the field today. So I'm not excusing it. I'm laying out the reasons for why maybe it didn't look as well as it could have. But again, the offensive line, I thought, needs some work. But again, I don't see anything that suggests they're going to be terrible.
No, and they're deep. That's one of the things that they need to find some chemistry. And I feel like we have a blessing and an opportunity that the opponents that we're facing here in the first few games are, I think we can rotate and give guys different opportunities and see, who works the best together. There's times where your left tackle is great, but he's even better when he has the right left guard next to him. And your left guard might not be the best at left guard, but the combo of this guy and this guy is just too much to walk away from. You've got to start them. And we may have guys solidified in those types of positions and in those type of combos already, but we may not have found all the combos, especially in game reps like you're talking about. So I don't have any concerns about the offensive line. I thought, Blake Corum, 95% today. And I think for what Eastern Carolina did in their blitz packages and the way they loaded the box and the way they move, and they're not having Sharon Moore and having different guys rotating into the offensive line. I thought they played adequately and maybe even a little more, maybe even a little better than just adequately. But I can understand people having higher expectations, but the offensive line didn't play poorly, and I'm really encouraged. I think we have 8, 9, maybe 10 guys that could start at almost any other Big Ten school in Power 5 conference, anywhere they chose to go. But they're here at Michigan, and it's nice to know that we have some depth at the offensive lines and depth at the running back position, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the foundation of our offense.
Absolutely. And so much of it too is, again, not everything kind of goes up like a dimmer switch. Obviously the non-conference is what it is, but you're going to get Rutgers that first week. I mean, that's going to be, ideally you want to have your best 5 locked in by then, but definitely need to have it for that next week when you go to Nebraska. I think that, again, 4 or 5 weeks into a season, you should have answers for things like that. But again, these game reps are going to be so critical over the next few weeks. P. Maximus wants to know, why does Michigan's wide receivers always fall down or dive down after the catch? No yards after the catch. Ryan, what do you see with that?
It's more of those career moves that we were talking about with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. I can understand as a fan. My father-in-law is like this, and I love my father-in-law to death, but every now and again, a guy's getting hung up by the ankles. There's 2 guys bearing down on him, and the guy will go down, and my father-in-law will be like, why doesn't he try and get that extra yard? Well, it's already a first down, so moving the ball 1 more yard really doesn't benefit the team all that much, and we go back and forth, and it's a joke that we make between each other. But I feel like a lot of the times these guys have their first downs. There's not much left. The meat has been collected off the bone, and it's just time to get to the next play. And I think some people don't like that element of football, but you're not the one out there risking your bones and your ligaments, so you don't get an opinion.
And it's not like Madden where you just smash the A button down 100 times and you break a tackle and, you're off to the races. So some football coaches would tell you every single play that they call is designed to score a touchdown, but obviously that is not the case. So not a big concern there, especially when a lot of it's the rollout stuff, the play action stuff. I mean, Colston Loveland, a few of his were over on the sideline. Again, there's not that much space to operate sometimes. So let's go to this one from Tristo, who says, what grade would you guys give the coaching staff today with the absences? Also, could you grade the line play on each side of the ball? What could it be? I mean, we'll start with the line play. I mean, I don't know. I'll give them C is I had an old professor who used to say C's get degrees. I guess that's what I would give to both of the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah, I would say a C plus probably for the defensive line, and I'd give the offensive line a B. I mean, JJ McCarthy got to stand back there and make his throws against pressures that these guys had not seen, and they're running 6, 7-man protections, and we're picking it up. And we had some lanes for some guys to get to the second level, and they tackled well when we got there. So I would say the C plus for the defensive line and a B straight for the offensive line.
And the coaching staff, again, a few miscues here and there. I have no issue giving them a B plus. I mean, you're down Jim Harbaugh, you're down Sharon Moore. Jesse Minter has never been a head coach before. Got a little taste of that on Saturday. Yeah, I mean, it was a clean game. It was a game where, again, also we haven't talked about this yet. The new rule with the clock running on first down, I hate it. Not a fan of that at all. Ryan, I don't know if you have a strong opinion on that, but it's going to limit their possessions this year. Especially when they're a team that likes to run the ball on first down, or if they are going to throw the ball more, whatever it is. But given how much Michigan possessed the ball in this game, it was also almost I think 2/3 of the game or close to it. Only 62 offensive snaps. It felt like they were on the field for much more than that. Coaching staff again. Play calling on that one drive right at the goal line was a little weird, but I liked the fact that I liked kind of airing it out. I liked that they were able to, sometimes the staff can get a little bullheaded and just be like, we're going to run no matter what, because gosh darn it, we're Michigan. We're going to win in the trenches. We're going to run the football because that's what we've always done. But today was kind of like pass to set up the run. And I don't know that every game will be like that, but it was kind of refreshing to see. So I'll give them a B plus. I
think I agree. I got my comments out, and it's when went too far, but shout out Sound Kayak. The grade I give is a W. I like that one. That made me laugh. That's a great grade as a W. But if I had to go to the old Scholastic system, I think I'd probably give about a B plus. I really liked what we did offensively. I thought we had a really good mix. One of the things I really liked seeing was, two backs in the backfield and in the gun, and then under center with two tight ends, three tight ends, the next play. And then, we've got trips out to the side and a tight trips bunch. And I just feel like we've got so many different looks that we give defenses. And as a guy who played defense, the more looks and formations that they give you, the more you have to study and know what they run out of those formations. So I thought the offensively, I really liked the play calling, minus, one or two, like you said, near the goal line. And then defensively, I mean, shoot, we're picking them apart. But yeah, we had no sacks, but they also didn't get across the 50-yard line. I think they got across the 50-yard line in the third quarter. Like, they only crossed midfield twice, maybe. Like, it's a pretty good defense. As far as I know, unless something has changed, a good defense keeps them out of the end zone. And this defense had no big plays that they gave up. They were really tight in coverage on some of the shot plays that they actually did take. And there were pressures. The guy got his out of his hands, so credit to their quarterback. But we were making him uncomfortable. He wasn't comfortably tossing the ball out there.
Aaron Harris says, what word did you guys use to describe today's effort? I'm going to say workmanlike, which I think that's apt. I think workmanlike is sometimes a very nice way to say boring or clinical. And that's how I would describe it as well.
I would say, yeah, it was a business trip. These guys went out and did what they were supposed to do. They probably executed everything in the playbook that they had for ECU, and for the most part, did it to the best of their abilities. And there's probably some things that they're going to clean up and some assignments missed and things like that, you always want to clean up from an execution standpoint. But overall, it was a very solid performance. And one other thing I did notice, and I wanted to mention, was I thought the effort level defensively running to the football was something that both teams, honestly, were doing a really good job with. But it was always a measuring stick as to how many defensive linemen they run an out route to the number one receiver on the field side, and he runs out of bounds. A D tackle typically is not going to show up in the camera. He's not going to be part of camera club. But we had a lot of times where our guys, defensive tackles, linebackers, there's 7, 8 guys around the football, and it was a quick pass. These guys are pursuing the football. We're deep, so we can be fast, and I think we're going to be dangerous because we are deep.
Mr. Dave with the $5 super chat asks, I'm not sure if I'm impressed with the game today. How would you compare ECU with Big Ten teams better than Indiana? I think I would ultimately say they're better than Indiana. Probably, we'll see. Maybe they're right kind of in line with Michigan State as a team that could win 6 or 7 games this year. It's Minnesota. So hard to say. Minnesota's probably a little bit better, but it's tough to say. East Carolina has been pretty consistent under Mike Houston. I think they'll probably wind up winning 6 or 7 games, maybe 8 if things break right. One of the guys I talked to from East Carolina said they think this is one of their most talented teams that they've ever had. It's just they're extremely inexperienced. So we'll see. Again, I think this is just one of those games where you don't get too high, don't get too low about what you saw. I think everything that you saw that was not all that impressive is correctable. I think the things that you saw that worked really well, like the intermediate passing game, like the play in the back 7, I think that stuff is sustainable and can get better. So again, people are going to try and power rank the Big Ten coming out of this week. I'll have the Fort do it on Sunday. I'll have our friends over at the Fort do that. But I don't feel any better, worse than I did coming into today. So it's tough to say, but I think Indiana might, even with the stuff that's going on at Northwestern, I think there's a chance that Indiana is the worst team in the Big Ten, one of the worst Power 5 teams that there are. So yes, I think that East Carolina will wind up being better than them.
I would agree with you, and I think they'd probably line up with a Nebraska and play them tight. I think they could probably play a Rutgers and beat a Rutgers. So I would call them, bottom tier Big Ten talent level. But again, you never know. There were some guys playing some good football on that side of the ball, and that's something that I was not expecting. I didn't know anything about them coming in, but there were some guys out there that were taking this as an opportunity to get some tape against a really good Michigan team, and they were playing really hard on their side of the football.
Yeah, tough to say how it matches up, but again, given the new clock rules, given the coaching staff stuff, given the fact that Michigan probably should have had an extra time. Actually, things probably leveled out the way they were supposed to. The first touchdown that they scored was JJ was over the line. I thought maybe not significantly, but by definition of the line of scrimmage on the broadcast, I thought that might have been a gimme for Michigan. But Roman was also owed one after a touchdown was called back against TCU. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just this game was just a bowl of oatmeal. It got the job done, and it satiated the need for football, and we'll see how it gets better from here. We talked about this, but Tristo says, am I expecting too much, or did the edge play kind of disappoint today? We did talk about that a little bit early on, but any final thoughts on what we saw from the edge guys? Given that they're 4 deep there, I really did expect to see a little bit more.
I'd like to see a little bit more in terms of production in the run game. It's just surprising to see some of these guys. I don't think we had any tackles for loss by defensive tackles. Have to look through it, but defensive tackles and edge guys, we didn't see any tackles for loss even on run plays, and that's something I thought we would see a little bit more of. But the way that they run their passing game at Eastern Carolina and the speed at which they get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, I mean, the amount of throws that they took that went past the first down markers, I would say you could probably count on one hand. These guys are getting the ball out of their hands quick, so the pass rush is negated. And so I saw a lot of edge rushers coming around the edge and getting their hand right on the guy as he's releasing the ball. And all it takes is for one hitch or one hesitant quarterback, and these things turns into sacks. So I saw nothing that jumped out as, oh, wow, they're amazing. But I also have no concerns that we don't have guys that can get after quarterbacks on our edges. They just need opportunities and game reps, and the numbers will come.
Jeremy asks, what is this coaching staff's infatuation with Khalil Mullings? CJ Stokes looked much better in limited opportunities. Yeah, I mean, I think that the number 3 running back thing, it really, and I think this is how it will wind up looking. It's going to be the number 3 running back, I think, will be by committee and a situational thing. I think if you're, if it's 2nd and 6 from, midfield, I think that's probably where a guy like Stokes is a little bit better suited for that role. Short yardage goal line stuff. If you want to throw Mullings in there, that's fine. But still, I think Blake Corum's proved enough in terms of being a short yardage back that you don't worry about those carries on the goal line. I mean, at some point, Benjamin Hall probably works in there. Maybe we see Cole Cabana work out of a similar role that Donovan Edwards did early on, but yeah, I mean, not a lot to, Mullings had 3 carries, Stokes had 2, Hall had 2, not a whole lot to glean out of that. I don't know that anyone is good enough in that backfield yet to be like, oh, they're number 3 with a bullet, but we'll see what happens. I think they're still trying to figure out as well.
I think it's pretty obvious if you looked at us last season, but Mullings adds a different element to the offense, and it also changes the mindset of the defense so we can get a little tricky with what we run, especially in the red zone. I think you see Mullings come into the game, and anyone would identify that guy at 6'2", 240. Well, this is going between the tackles, and we need to, bow our necks and get our big guys in. So you might be able to make a defense change their personnel and make them think, all right, we have to shut this guy down in the middle, which then gives you one-on-ones on the edges, or it might give you someone that you can get on like a jet sweep or something like that and attack when they have some of their bigger bodies out. So I think Mullings is being used to manipulate the defense, and I think he's a good player and a good back, but I think he's going to be used selectively and situationally to try to create matchup problems. And I'd be very surprised if we continue to line up with Mullings and just bash the ram forward if teams are stopping him. But that's what he's there for.
All right. Unless we have any super chats, I'm going to take 2 more comments and then we'll wrap things up here. So if you want to move yourself to the front of the line and we extend things a bit, feel free to do so using that donate button below. But I'm going to go to this one from Andrew Myers, who says, were there any injuries during the game today? Mccarthy Page did not play much. No, Mccarthy Page was questionable coming into the day. He didn't play a ton. I think they wanted to get reps for the guys behind them because Michigan sometimes will play 3 safeties throughout the year. So you want to get guys as ready as they can. I thought Keon Saab played really well today. I thought that Zeke Berry looked good in the few snaps we got to see of him. Unless I missed something, I I didn't see anyone really get rolled up on. I don't recall seeing the training staff go out at all.
Clemens, at receiver, looked like he twisted his knee one more time. I did see that. That was the one that I saw. I don't think he returned afterwards either, but I don't know if they mentioned anything in the post game about him.
Okay. Yeah, he was questionable coming into the day as well. He was banged up in fall camp and just recently worked his way back. And I know a lot of people are anxious to see what he can do. So hoping for a clean bill of health for him moving forward. But yeah, other than that, we'll see. I haven't seen any of the post-game press conference yet. I don't know if anything was addressed down there with Jesse Minter or the players, but I think they came out of today relatively unscathed, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's the bumps and bruises that materialize after a game. There are maybe the bruises that get satiated with the ice bath after the game, and then obviously practice next week. We'll see. But Shadyville just jumped in with a $2 super chat to let us know that Ohio State quarterback Kyle McCord just threw an interception. So, hey, I mean, that's worth jumping the line for anything. Ohio State at Indiana, of course, happening right now as we wrap up the show. Thank you, Shadyville, for the beer money donation there. If there's nothing else, we're going to end on this from Adam Shepardson, who says J.J. McCarthy wins the Tough as Nails award for his response after the roughing call. Did anyone else see how quickly he jumped back up? That's his hockey background showing up. And I love that. I did see how quickly he jumped up. It was also when I started to feel like, hey, maybe it's time to get the starters out of the game. I won't accuse ECU of headhunting, but it did get a little chippy in the last quarter and a half or so. But yeah, I mean, JJ McCarthy he's the complete package. I mean, he's a guy that I know there was a lot of discourse about him not being a captain, but again, I mean, your quarterback at the college level so often is going to determine what your ceiling is as a football team. And he is well respected in there. We've heard him described as the Pied Piper of Schembechler Hall. Everyone follows him. He's a selfless guy. He, has a ton of heart. You see that hockey background, and he's pretty darn talented too. I mean, his pocket awareness, his pocket presence. I mean, he made a couple plays that were just the ball. You just can't throw a ball better than the way he did. And in the tight windows too. That last Roman Wilson touchdown that we talked about earlier was maybe as good a throw as he's ever had at Michigan. So lots to be excited about there. That guy is, again, we just have not seen his best football yet. And it's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, I mean, he's just continuing to develop and get better. And again, I still think that today we only saw one facet of the J.J. McCarthy offense because he didn't really run the football. And that's another element of his game that his mobility is underrated, and he just needs to be smart about how he uses that and when he uses it and when to get down. But that's something that, if needed, he could have resorted to getting some of these first downs with his legs, but didn't need to because he was too busy completing 15 passes in a row. So he's a very good quarterback. I've seen some of these guys in the chat and comments saying potentially best in Big Ten. I agree with that. Potentially best in the country. I think I agree with that. It's going to matter who's catching the balls, but the way Roman Wilson played today, the way Cornelius Johnson, I think, played today, and then Colston Loveland, he's got enough weapons that our passing game can be elite. And it's something that I feel like is a facet that we've complained has not been existent of the Michigan teams as of late. But I think with what JJ's capable of with the offensive line and how much teams have to worry about us running the football down their throats, these guys can throw some daggers into some teams. And I'm really excited to see where it goes from here, because I think the only way to go is up.
And I'm putting us on JJ McCarthy watch. He has at least 12 more games to throw 23 touchdown passes to finally break that the touchdown record at Michigan. And I think he's going to do it. And he might even put some distance between himself and the other guys on the list. But Ryan, I think that's going to do it for us today. Michigan wins 30-3. Again, workmanlike, a W, whatever you'd like to describe it as. That's what it was. Michigan's 1-0. They will take on UNLV next week at 3:30. That game will be on CBS. So you don't even need cable. Just put on Channel 62 in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, and you will be able to see Michigan live next week. No more streaming issues, hopefully, fingers crossed. But Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Guys, thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. We still have our subscriber deal going at the Wolverine until I think it runs through I want to say Sunday night, but you can get a new subscriber can get in on the Wolverine.com for $1 for your first month. And if you want an annual subscription, you can get that for $49.99, which is currently 50% off. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video. Again, we'll be back. Ballas and Skeen will have a show tomorrow. And then myself, Ballas, and Clayton will be back Monday night for another live show. And then, of course, the two of us here will be back after next week's game. So thank you to Ryan Van Bergen. Thank you to our producer, Megan. Thank you to our friends over at My Perfect Franchise. Be sure to check out myperfectfranchise.net using the description below. We'll be back next time. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.